Okay. I'm going to call the meeting of the Preservation Commission of the City of Redondo Beach to order. Can I ask for the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Jackson,
Present.
Commissioner Galassi, Commissioner Caldwell. Okay, Commissioner McNerney. Commissioner Tainer. Commissioner Assis,
Here.
and Vice Chair Matsuno.
Present. Okay. Commissioner Freeman, would you like to lead the, Jackson, would you like to lead the flag
Sure.
salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next to the approval of the order of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any opposed? Okay. I guess we can move to any blue folder items.
Yes. You were
Okay.
actually emailed 2 blue folder items earlier today.
Uh-huh.
One included the Certified Local Government Annual Report, and then the second included the Mills Act calculation examples, which will be a discussion item later in the agenda.
Okay. Do we need a motion to receive and file items then? Do I have a motion to receive and file the blue folder items?
I'll make that motion.
Super.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have the consent calendar. These are for business items except those formally noticed for the public hearing or those pulled for discussion are assigned to the consent calendar. Commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, or acted upon separately. Do I need to read through the entire text there? Should I?
No,
Okay.
you're just including the affidavit of posting as well as the approval of the minutes from the
Okay.
March 2nd meeting.
Okay, and we need to vote for that.
Yes, motion, please.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the affidavit of posting for the Preservation Commission meeting and the approval of the minutes of the Preservation Commission meeting of March 2nd?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approved. Are there any excluded consent calendar items?
No.
None. Okay. Public participation on any non-agenda items? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on a non-agenda item?
We have no e-comments, and we also have no one on Zoom requesting to speak.
Okay. Ex parte communication. Do any of the commission members have any ex parte communications to report? Hearing none, we can move on now to the public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there any items to be continued from previous agendas?
We do not have any continued items.
None. Okay, we're going through this pretty quickly. Any items for discussion prior to action?
Yes, we have 2 discussion items this
Okay.
evening.
Okay, the first is a discussion and possible action on recommendations to the city manager for the upcoming fiscal year 2022, 2023 budget.
Get to use the podium from here. It's great. Hi. Good
Fancy,
evening,
fancy.
everybody. How are you?
Hi.
Fancy.
Look at this.
Fancy, fancy.
Nice to meet you all. I'm Mike Witsansky, city manager here, City of Redondo Beach. Pleasure to be here. I've been speaking with each of the commissions to gather input from all of you on the development of our proposed annual budget. So rather than prepare the budget with staff, deliver it to the council, and then seek your input, we thought it'd be helpful to actually talk to all of you before we finalize our budget recommendations, which we have to do each year by the end of day, May 16th. So we're just under 2 weeks away from proposing the 22-23 fiscal year budget to the mayor and council. So I don't have much of a presentation tonight. I'm really here to listen to all of you. So from your perspective, what's top of mind as you think about your role as commissioners? What's top of mind as you think about your role as residents and what you might see or desire in the community or your neighborhoods? I'm just really here to gather your input and listen to what you're thinking about as a community member and what you think we might want to include in next year's budget, whether it be operating or capital. So I'd love to turn it over here, you, and listen. And I can answer questions too if you have anything that you're curious about regarding our process or any budget detail in particular. So whoever wants to speak first, feel free.
Mike, we've, over the last, I'd say 12 years, have made a concerted effort to get a new survey done in the city.
Yeah.
I've gone to the budget committee, I've probably written at least 3 or 4 letters, and it was actually part of one of the budget items that made it onto the paper. You know, a lot of research I did showed that almost every major city, including Torrance, San Diego, almost every major city has done that, and we haven't really done a thorough one for probably 15 years. I think, what was it, 86 was the last one?
Yeah, there might have been an update in the early 90s, but yeah, it's been a very long time.
And that was a kind of a windshield one, the one
Yeah,
that
it
was
was.
done then. And, you know, I live right on the Esplanade, and I know all the houses that are in the avenues down there. And there are so many houses that probably are rated C or not even that are A or B houses. I mean, there's so many original houses in that area. As a member of the historical board of directors for the Historical Society, I just can't, you know, urge enough that I know it's going to be costly, $100,000 or so, somewhere in that area. But I had recommended a couple years ago as well that if you couldn't get the whole bulk of the money, why don't you just start saving a quarter of it, 10%, even 10%, so that at least at some point it will get done, because we really, we can't afford to lose any more important and historical houses. So I'm just putting that out there. I didn't write a letter this year, but I think it's great that you came here tonight. And I just really urge you, you know, in your role to really take it seriously. I mean, it sounds like a survey of the city. It, you know, it doesn't have that, you know, that real perk to it that a lot of other items may have, but it really is important. If you do a little research on it, pull it up on the internet, you'll see just how much many cities have embraced it. Pasadena, just a great job of doing that. So I just really want to put that out there to you.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. In fact, I tend to agree. I think we are overdue, and it is something we're taking a hard look at this year. And if we can find the funding, I think we will be recommending that particular item. So it's, you know, as you said, it's been many years, a couple of decades at least. And it's created some problems for us too, as folks acquire homes and look at what they can and can't do with those properties. And I think there's some room for improvement on the city's part to message that and also to really recognize those resources that are precious. So appreciate the comment.
Thank you.
I might just add on to that, if the last update to the survey was done in the 90s, we have 20 or 30 years of new properties that become eligible because the first requirement is that it be 50 years old. And so each year,
Right.
there's going to be all these new houses becoming eligible for the Mills Act program.
We're going to work hard to preserve all that early 1970s architecture.
Yeah, well, one of the things I think, maybe this can be a referral to staff, but I think the Preservation Commission should start considering guidelines as far as mid-century properties. Most of the properties that we've dealt with have been the 1920s bungalows. But now, those 1950s, 60s, mid-century homes, and there is a growing interest in their historical value now.
Sure.
I don't know how many are left in the city that are untouched,
Yeah.
but it's something that the Preservation Commission should consider.
It's a great point, and I think that's ultimately what the survey, helps
Yeah.
really formulate for us, right? That becomes the sort of discussion point, and we have a better inventory of where we stand, and I think there's a lot to be learned from that effort. So, appreciate that.
I'll just add one more thing. Being on the Historical Society, at one point, we divided the city up amongst probably about 10 members and just did our own survey. And you might even consider, since the term is 4 years, is maybe even looking at the possibility of training commissioners to go out. I mean, it's nice to walk out, get the exercise, and come up, like what Jeff said, the standards that you would use. But it's not difficult to discern where a house is in original condition as it was. And, they could serve as I think the formal survey definitely should be done. But after that, the commissioners who could be trained on something like that, I've thought a long time that could be a great idea, because I walked the streets and did a big area, and it was actually really interesting to see how many houses there were out there.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Yeah, as kind of a go forward solution. Yeah, appreciate that.
Mike, I would love to follow up on Commissioner Matsuno's points, but before I do that, thank you very much for coming here. That's incredibly kind of you. I also had a chance to watch your presentation to the Recreation and Parks Commission last time. I thought you did a fantastic job. I also want to congratulate on your behalf, in your person, whoever did this
Oh,
wonderful
yeah.
hall. This is very nice.
You're the first commission in here. It's fantastic.
Yes, we are honored. We are honored.
It's beautiful. It really came out. Really, it was a team effort. Our IT folks, Public Works, a lot
Yes.
involved, Clerk's Office. There are a lot of people involved in this. It's been
And
a
this
great.
is something that Redondo Beach definitely deserves. Connecting to that and what Commissioner Matsuno said, interestingly, the biggest mid-century architecture piece in the city is owned by the city, and we are sitting in it.
Right, City Hall.
Our city hall is a wonderful piece of architecture. It's in the books all over the place by Victor Green and Associates, who also, if I'm not mistaken, helped develop most of the buildings in the Riviera Village in the same style. Among, building various shopping malls all around the country, but that's not. So as Commissioner Matsuno very rightly said, not only in terms of the housing, but in terms of the public architecture, mid-century is becoming a very important part of the city. And I just want to make sure that how you can incorporate that into the budget, but I just wanted to make sure that you preserve it to the best ability you can, especially the city hall, the civic center, and maybe allocate some budget to educate either the students or the architects or something like that, or maybe even publish a book about this, the civic center and the history of architecture in Riviera Village. The reason I say this before I go on for too long, in our special meeting last time, we talked about a particular project on Catalina Avenue. And the discussion was about like, what's the style of Redondo Beach? You know?
Right.
What's the architectural style? And it's not a soup, it's like more like a fruit salad, you know? We have everything in there.
Right, we're all over the place.
Right, and the topping is probably, in my humble opinion, is the mid-century, and that's what people are. So I think it will become important as we're thinking about, you know, the waterfront development, so on and so forth. That's one thing I wanted. The second thing is I also, as you know, you and I, we talked about this. I really do appreciate your and the city's efforts about the historic library. I think it's a jewel. We discussed this among ourselves. It's beyond the scope of this particular commission right now, but because it's a historic building, I think Stacy actually informed us today about what's going on. I think this is a unique opportunity for Redondo Beach to set the tone for the waterfront. So with that, I just thank you again and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's going to be a great exercise. We're, you know, well into it now, gathering input on how we want to use the facility in the future. It's a beautiful place. It's maybe my favorite building in all the city. It's just wonderful. And, you know, we've got some capital money that's already been set aside to do some work there, our windows, and, you know, there's our elevator, roofs. We have some real kind of deferred maintenance items that we need to execute. And I think we might need a little bit more money in this year's capital budget to get some of the window treatments completed. Prices are going up and it's a fairly expensive exercise. So there may very well be a role for the commission as we go through the selection of the windows and that kind of a treatment. So not sure where it will stand ultimately, but it's definitely a worthwhile exercise. So yeah, thank you. Hi.
I had a question about I guess Public Works. During COVID, the street cleaning efforts were respectful of cars being parked on streets and not ticketing them. I guess because people didn't have any place else to park, they were home, and I get that, and I think that was a wise decision. So I wonder going forward, what is the plan? Do they continue to go? Is there a change of attitude? Is there a change of?
We're back to full normal streeping services and sadly ticketing where required. Yeah, it's for us, we have a couple of obligations. One, you know, there's a desire, of course, to pick up the debris and try to remove it, you know, from our gutters, and which ultimately blows into sidewalks and yards and the like. But more importantly, we have an obligation under our NPDES requirements, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System requirements for water quality purposes. Being sort of at the end of pipe, our stormwater almost immediately flows into the ocean. So catching debris, pulling trash out of curbs and gutters and out of the street is important for us to maintain our water quality standards and comply with our permit requirements. So sweeping is a big part of that. I know sweeping's not perfect. You know, it's dusty and it's noisy and it's all those things. It's a flawed response, but it is effective in pulling trash out of the street. So for us to do that effectively, we need cars to be out of the way. So we're back to full, you know, weekly sweeping and ticketing, you know, where folks aren't able to move their vehicles. But we did suspend it during COVID, you know, as you pointed out, just because so many people were working from home and schooling from home, and you know, where were you going to put all the cars?
Right.
So, yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Anything else?
I was going to mention that I thought it would be a good idea, and I wouldn't want to add additional responsibilities to the hardworking staff. But I think the preservation program here and the Mills Act program, it would be nice if there was a kind of a professionally produced brochure presentation. And then if it could be periodically, maybe not every year, but every few years, be mailed out to all the potential historic resource owners, just to let people know about the program, because I have a feeling most people are completely unaware of the existence of the program.
Yeah, it's a good thought. I know understanding the rules, particularly for folks who have bought, in the last few years and aren't really acutely aware of the survey and some of the requirements that come with, different property conditions. So it's an interesting thought.
If I may, I would actually try to add the new design guidelines to it as well for everybody. Because it seems to me that, I live on a street where people are building like crazy. There are 4 constructions going on my street right now. And, they are like all over the place, if you know what I mean, in terms of, the distance. And I've seen more and more, this is very unfortunate, but I take the liberty of telling this in a budget meeting. People are getting rid of their front yards and putting concrete on it and parking their cars on front yards, which is, they must, because there's no other place to park, because everybody changed their garages to offices. And that's like causing a major, whatever you want to call it, visual pollution.
Yeah.
Instead of, having car parks right in front of there, between the sidewalk and the car. Anyway, so adding design, if that's okay with you, just like the design guidelines, or maybe in a separate publication.
Yeah, it might be separate noticing. I think council's working on those and there's, a lot to that. And at some point there'll need to be some public notification of those changes. And, we try to do things now as electronically as we can too. We used to have a quarterly brochure that we would send out as a recreation brochure largely. It had a little bit of a city newsletter associated with it, and we'd mail it out. And, as times have evolved and we work more now with our online media and the like, we're trying to kind of build that out. But no, the thoughts are good. Notification, making sure our residents are aware of the different requirements, whatever they might be. Those are good suggestions. Well, great. Any other questions or thoughts? It's really nice to see you all, and you look great in the new seats, and, and don't, you can't adjust the seats, just so you know. You can raise them, and you can actually even inflate the lumbar and other things. Just make sure you don't, council members might get a little touchy if too many changes are made to them.
Now, Mike, did you have something to do with that?
No, yeah. But great. Well, listen, good to see you all. I thank you for your feedback and appreciate your volunteerism and all the good work you do for the city. So thank you, and we'll see you all again, okay?
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, our next item for discussion is Los Angeles County Assessor Mills Act presentation.
Yes, good evening. So we have members from the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office. Thanks to Senior Planner Antonio Gardea, he has been coordinating with their team to have them here to answer your questions. I'm going to provide a very brief overview here. As you all know, the state legislation was enacted back in 1972. This is our main incentive for our homeowners to designate and preserve our beautiful historic properties. As part of this, they get a tax break, and hopefully they filter those funds that are saved into the property and help maintain and restore the property in perpetuity. That tax break is based upon a prescribed capitalization rate. So actually, when a property is entered into the Mills Act contract and recorded, the assessor's office looks at that capitalization rate. They look at the fair market value as well as the base year value. And of those 3 values, they choose the lowest rate for the property. It is a 10-year contract, but it automatically renews annually. It stays with the property, so new owners are bound by that contract. They are expected to maintain and restore the property. The Preservation Commission has reviewed a variety of construction projects over the years that include additions to the resource itself, as well as new units behind or adjacent to the resources. So we've had a lot of questions about how those elements are assessed for the property. And for that, I will turn it over to Supervising Appraiser David Crockett. Welcome.
Love your podium. Lucky to have such nice new facilities. Thank you for having me over. Really, I'm here to answer your questions. I don't really have a presentation per se. I know Stacy, I think, gave you copies of the handout that I provided. Just a few examples of how we've calculated what we call partial Mills Acts, where you've had a property under Mills Act contract, and then they've added additional improvements that may not be included as part of the Mills Act. I started with as simple an example as I could find in that way, where you've got do you all have the, I know, okay, just checking.
It's within the blue folder item. If you can pull that up, or I can also share it on the screen. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. So what we've got is, as she explained before, there are three values that we calculate for each property. There's what we call our trended base year value. When you purchase a property, that value continues to trend a maximum of 2% a year. That's what we sometimes call the Proposition 13 value. Then there's market value. What is the property worth as if it was for sale today, this time? And then there's the Mills Act value, which is a capitalized value. Most of the capitalization rate is given to us by the State Board of Equalization. We don't have much hand in that. We take rents from the neighboring area, capitalize those, and you get this value that's very often much less than what market value is. There are some properties that still have base year values from like 1975, so those values are less than the Mills Act value, and so that's the value that's enrolled, is that trended base year value. But for the most part, the Mills Act value is the lowest value, and that's the value you'll see enrolled, and then the people are taxed based on. In this example, you've got $1 million is the unrestricted value, $1.2 million is the market value, and then the Mills Act value for the property that's under contract is $403,000. And then on this particular property, they added a 726 square foot addition to the improvements that were originally under contract. Okay? So that additional square footage that's not under contract gets assessed initially at market value, and then it gets trended forward, Prop 13 value going on. So we keep track of, like in this case, it was like about $100,000 when it was added. Now it's $113,000. We add that to the 403, and you get the Mills Act value of 516. Okay? And so we have to track those parts of the property that are not part of the Mills Act and carry that forward. It was interesting to me to hear you discuss the survey that you do. One of the things under Mills Act that I didn't see on the general information slide that you have is that according to the Office of Historical Preservation, you're supposed to be doing every 5 years, checking that people are honoring the contract. Okay? I don't know if anybody does that. I don't know if anybody's able to do that. Do you have any questions about that first? Yes, sir.
You mentioned about checking that they maintain the property in the way that they should. One of the questions that we discussed at some point was a specific handout of what you should be looking for. When you contact a person that is under the Mills Act and perform this 5-year plan, there have been many people have been very strong on the fact that we should be doing that. But at the same time, it's something that could be confrontational, probably not, but it's one of those situations where you're going to go in and you're going to look the outside. And do you have a specific set of guidelines for that?
We do not. So the assessor's office isn't in the business of determining whether the property is a historical property or not. That's up to the cities. You keep a register of your historical properties. It sounds like you are talking about having another survey as soon as possible to identify properties that you might add to your register, right? And then you could, any of those, I mean, literally you could probably walk around and give them flyers. Hey, you qualify, we can put you on the historical register and you can qualify the Mills Act. But we don't get involved in that. You tell us whether it's a Mills Act or not. And you tell us what part of a property, because you could specify, okay, if there are two improvements, you could tell us the house in front is historically significant and the house in back is not. And we can do a partial Mills Act on that, where the front house will value under the Mills Act contract and the back house will do at market value or Prop 13 value.
Now, as long as, an addition is approved that is attached to the house, it was always kind of assumed that that would be included in the Mills Act. Now, a separate structure, it's always been assumed, or at least for sure recently, that that would not be included in the Mills Act. Can you address both of those issues?
Well, that's an interesting question. Our perspective is that at the time the Mills Act contract comes to us, and in fact, we don't always get a copy of the actual contract when we are asked to enroll or start evaluate a new Mills Act property. We assume that the property as of that date is what's under contract, and that anything in addition to that then later is outside the contract. So like in this first example where they added 726 square feet, we assumed that it was not part of the contract and that we are separately assessing that. If you provided us a contract that said, this and anything appurtenant to it would be part of the contract, then we would honor that and then thus change what we're including. Definitely, you have the ability to, through whatever processes, allow somebody to add to a property as long as it's in something that meets your historical requirements, and then update your contract to include that area. I mean, in theory, and I don't know any place that's really done this, if somebody were to build a historically accurate property, ADU, accessory dwelling unit, you might say, okay, that's part of the historical property as well. I just say it. It's kind of a gray area.
Because I was always under the assumption that the final call was your call.
No. We, as I say, we honor the contract with the initial property in mind, and then anything new after the contract is written, then we assume is outside the contract. But outside of that, we're not making judgment. I happen to work with somebody who is very, very interested in the historical properties, and she is very adamant that some properties that have been granted some properties that have been given a Mills Act, granted a Mills Act contract, probably didn't deserve one, and we should not honor it, but it's not our place to do that. That she can argue about that, but it's not our place.
And I just have one last question, and that's, is it true that Los Angeles has discontinued or suspended the Mills Act?
Various cities go through the process of having and not having new Mills Act contracts created. I cannot myself speak to what the city of Los Angeles is doing. I live in the city of Long Beach, where for many, many years, we had a very active historical society, and very active, we're creating new Mills Acts, and then we had a new mayor come in and said, none. For about 8 years, we had no new Mills Acts. And then as soon as he was gone, then we started having more new Mills Acts. Long Beach is large enough where we have whole neighborhoods that the neighborhood has been designated a historical neighborhood. As long that once you're in that, now you're limited to what kinds of things you can do to it. And in theory, a certain number or all of the houses within that district could be filing for the Mills Act. Now, are they doing so? No. A lot of people do not want to be under the Mills Act because they want to be able to remodel their house the way they want to remodel it, not be constrained by the,
Yeah, we have
Mills
the
Act.
same situation out here.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
for the
I
first?
have a question, and it has to do with the Mills Act value. So even with your presentation, I have the vaguest idea that it's generally based on rents, the rental values in the neighborhood. Would you say, because you have this example here, and so when people ask me, what's the value of the Mills Act, and I say, well, you save on your property tax, and I always tell them, generally it's a 50% reduction, sometimes a little bit more. Is that generally the case kind of across the board, or do other factors change that?
Like any real property, there are a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Here in the city of Redondo Beach, how close are you to the ocean? How close are you not to the ocean? If you're over in Manhattan Beach, if you've got a historical property on the Strand, its unrestricted market value may be several $1 billion, and the Mills Act value may be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay, it can vary greatly just because of the location.
And again, that's determined by the rental prices in the surrounding area?
Exactly right, because what you have, in many cases with the Mills Act property, so you were discussing, your cow bungalow population, right? So a lot of the old cow bungalows are small. They don't have big modern kitchens. They have small closets. Sure, they're nice. They've got nice built-ins and whatnot, but they don't necessarily command the same rent as a brand-new condo somewhere else in the neighborhood, right? So what you get is, just by the fact of the type of property it is, the rents are constrained, and you'll have kind of a different value just for that. Most of your historical neighborhoods are farther from the beach, right? And yet the market value is, hey, I can walk 3 blocks, be at the beach, and especially like this last 6, 8 months, the market values have gone up humongously, right? So the difference between the unrestricted market value and the Mills Act value can vary. One of the things that happens is, as well as the market value is going up, the rents have gone up quite a bit these last couple of years. And so you do see a little bit of a correlation in terms of the Mills Act values going up, but I could never say that it's 50%. There isn't any direct correlation like, oh, it's 50% or it's always 40%. I don't know. From year to year, the state tells us that the capitalization value for one thing or another varies. One year it's 4.5, another year maybe it's 3.5, and that makes a big difference. That 1% in the capitalization makes a big difference in what the ultimate rate will, or ultimate value will be.
That kind of makes it a little bit of a hard sell when you're telling people you're going to get a tax benefit, and they ask how much, and you're well.
Well, part of it is, how long have they owned the property? I think here in Redondo Beach, you have a veteran of foreign wars building that's under a Mills Act contract. They've had it since 1975 or something. The 75 base year value is the lower value. They happen to have a Mills Act. We review it every year, but to no real benefit because that 75 base value is always lower than the Mills Act value. The greatest difference is if it's important to you, sell it. Okay, from my perspective, either way, doesn't matter. But if you're trying to sell Mills Acts to sell to people the benefit of taking care of their property in exchange for the Mills Act, right? To have that taxable value and then maintain the character of the neighborhood, not have cars parked on the median and whatnot, right? One, it's, yeah, if you have bought recently, you've got one of these old bungalows and you've bought recently, your new unrestricted base year value is going to be very close to that market value. And so the amount of benefit is going to be greater than if you have an old 86 or 92 base year value, okay? So the newer people moving in are going to see a greater value from the Mills Act than some of the old people or longer term property owners. The other thing is, for anybody who's interested in selling a property, if they have a Mills Act in place, when they go to sell it, that is a big opportunity for whoever's buying it. Because then they will immediately get the benefit of that Mills Act value because they're under contract, right? And that's really almost one of the really big ones, is right there, is you go in now and you buy a house for $2 million and Mills Act value might be $500,000. Don't know. And it isn't just the SFRs, of course. It's apartment buildings or, you know, in Long Beach, we have a bed and breakfast that's a Mills Act property. I mean, it could be almost anything. Do you want to go through further examples, or does that kind of cover all your questions?
You covered a lot. Thank you very much for coming out here. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Mr. Aziz?
No further questions. Thank you.
Okay. That's it? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is items from staff. I'll just mention, I've sent you a few emails today. I sent you the link to the historic library information. That discussion had first opened with the city council back in January. Community Services has been performing all of their outreach. They did host an open house in March, and they had an online survey. They've been meeting with various commissions. The next commission will be the Public Art Commission, and that will be on May 25th. And then the results of all of their meetings and the online survey will be presented to the City Council on June 7th.
If you participate, if one of the commissioners here participate in a public meeting, is it proper for us to introduce ourselves as commissioners if it's not a preservation issue?
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Forbes. If you do go to one of the commissions, you're certainly not speaking on behalf of the full Preservation Commission. However, you can just acknowledge that you are on the commission so they understand what your background and your interests might be. And just acknowledge, this is my own personal opinion, but I do serve on that commission. And if you do have any comments that you might want to send an email, like just a little bit more thoughtful, take the time to write an email, you can send that to Cameron Harding. He's our Community Services Director. And he offered to, accept any of those comments that you might have, and so they can incorporate that in that feedback that will go to the City Council.
I have just done that. I participated in the most recent Recreation and Parks Commission, and I introduced myself as a Preservation Commissioner, but I also added immediately that I'm here on my personal behalf, and these are my own personal opinions. And I was given 3 minutes to make my comment, which I did. And then one of their kind commissioners suggested that I would be given additional time, and nobody seconded that motion. So I was shut after 3 minutes. And I thought that was a very nice gesture to a fellow commissioner by the. Having said that, the reason why I'm saying it, because before me, the person who actually commented was a member of a private corporation, and he was given extra time to make his case. So I was a little bit offended, for the record.
Yeah, and I think that that's why it might be valuable if you do want to, construct your comments in an email, because you won't be having that limit of your time or number of characters that you can submit. And as well as, right now, they're looking at it from more of the programmatic side of things. So it's not, that is, in talking with the community services director, why it hasn't yet come to you as a commission. But that being said, I think that there's a lot of history there, and it would be important to share any thoughts that you may have individually. Thank you.
Would modifications to that structure have to go through the preservation? Because it is a landmark.
It is a designated structure and it's on the National Register. So yes, it would come back to the Preservation Commission for review. And we've, Director Forbes, open discussion with the director, Cameron Harding, right? And so we're a part of that conversation.
Yeah, and City Manager Witzansky is aware of that as well. And I know that our staff here have had conversations with the Public Works team, just so that they're aware of what changes. And, it may be looking at, what triggers that review, what might trigger the subcommittee review if it's more of a maintenance. But ultimately, it will have go under the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Any other items from staff?
Yes, Vice Chairman Suno, I did have one other item. As you all might be aware, the Preservation Commission did take a look at the Catalina Village project, and it was on Monday. Very soon thereafter, on a Thursday, the 19th, it went before the Planning Commission for review. And the Planning Commission did have a lot of discussion, and part of their discussion was what occurred at Preservation Commission. So they had a lot of questions about the decision, in particular on the last resolution for the certificate of appropriateness for the residential development on the site, which there was some discussion, and there was a split vote on that. We described what happened. Some of the commissioners actually took the time to take a look at to watch the video and had some questions about what occurred. And so I got the sense that there was some uneasiness at their level as well with the design of the project. And ultimately, what they did is as a whole, they voted to continue the project and have it returned back. But there were a lot of questions about what the Preservation Commission would be seeing, because that was although the certificate of appropriateness was granted, it was granted with the condition that it returned back. And there was a lot of questions on, well, what is it that they are expecting when it does go back? What will they see? So that, I just wanted to bring that back to let you know that happened. Subsequent to that, because the project was continued for a month, they're going to look at it, tentatively scheduled right now for the 19th. The applicant appealed the Preservation Commission's decision. So they're holding the right to withdraw their appeal as well. So of your decisions that took place that night. So we'll,
So we approved the certificate of appropriateness. So the appeal was regarding the amendment that we made?
it was regarding, the appeal is for the decisions that were made that night. And I think that the developer is interested in making sure that all the entitlements move forward together. And should the planning commission, whatever the decision is, if it does get appealed to the city council, they would want this commission's actions to be in front of the city council as well. So I think that was one of the goals in submitting the appeal of this body's decision.
Yeah, and we can certainly distribute that. I know it's not agendized for discussion tonight, but, you know, we did want to make sure that you were updated on where that, the status of the project is. But we can circulate a copy of that appeal, just so that you have an idea of what their comments were on that.
And I think that was it on my end.
Can I ask you a question? I just don't know the procedure.
Yes.
How does one appeal a decision made by the Preservation Commission? What's the procedure? Do they come to you or do they go to the city council?
They actually filed with the city clerk. And
Yeah.
it could be any affected person or party could file the appeal. So them as the applicant, they felt that they needed to go ahead and file the appeal. It wasn't because they disagreed with the decision necessarily, but again, that they wanted to have the entirety of the decision in front of the deciding, the body that's going to make the decisions ultimately, if that happens to be the city council.
Yeah, and the procedures are they're spelled out in the, like the timeline that they have to appeal, how they submit their appeal, what body it gets appealed to. That's all in our municipal code, under the historic I think it's under it might be under our procedures.
Yeah,
So,
it's under the procedures.
yeah, so with that, they were just following those procedures, hit it within the timeframe, and it would be an appeal if it is heard before the city council.
Right, and so there was also the question of, in filing that appeal, I think one of the issues that we did talk about at the Planning Commission was if there was an appeal of the Preservation Commission's decision, who the hearing body would be. And your commission has a very set kind of lane that you operate in, and the Planning Commission has their items that are under their purview. And so we wanted to make sure that they understood that even though your decision was a recommendation on the variance, that the appeal wouldn't be in front of them. They don't decide on the certificates of appropriateness. The city council does. So we trying to make sure that that was clear when we did take the item forward to the Planning Commission and kind of made sure to try to clarify that their role, although that seems to overlap somewhat, there are some boundaries.
Just to make sure I'm understanding, what was at issue was the Preservation Commission's review of the new residential structures.
They appealed the entirety, so all of the decisions were
Yeah,
appealed.
we'll
Including-
circulate that so you can,
Okay.
it'll spell that out, yeah.
But for at the discussion at the Planning Commission, there was a specific question actually, and it had to do with CEQA, and it has to do with the impacts to historic resources and the prescriptive standards that are applied via this commission to issue the certificates of appropriateness and what those standards call out. And in that case, we were explaining that the federal standards look at having additions that are both compatible and in harmony with the existing buildings, but also differentiated. Now, in the design review for the Planning Commission, they're looking at different criteria. They're looking at how the site operates within itself, whether the design is consistent with itself, if the users have adequate open space, if there is, things like trash enclosures, if there's adequate parking. So different kind of criteria, different things that they're looking at versus what this commission is looking at. And that was the question that they had, is did the Preservation Commission arrive at making a definitive decision on that certificate of appropriateness and those criteria?
So you're welcome to watch the May 19th Planning Commission meeting. If the Planning Commission opts to approve the project, then the appeal probably will not move forward. However, it's a placeholder in case the determination is not in favor of the applicant, then the entire package could be appealed to the City Council for review.
And we'll keep you informed on what the determination is.
Yeah, and mind you, it's not just whether the applicant appeals that decision. It could also be any other aggrieved party could file an appeal and have that go in front of the City Council.
Were there, because we had the blue folder items from neighbors, some who opposed, were they present at the planning and?
Yes, they actually, some of those same neighbors did speak at the meeting and have submitted e-comments as well.
I want to, I think we're on the borderline of getting beyond this, because since this isn't an agendized item, with that, there were no additional appeals from them. And, but like I said, please do feel free to watch the Planning Commission meeting if you are interested in kind of seeing what their deliberations are and comments.
Thank you.
Any other items?
I think that's all.
Nope, that's it from staff.
Okay. Are there any commission items or referrals to staff?
Would it be possible to make a motion if that does become an issue that we can agendize that in discussion?
Once we know what the Planning
Sure.
Commission determines, we will inform the commission, and then from there, we will decide what needs to take place.
Yeah, because if there is a certain procedure and it's not a public hearing and we start discussing an actual project that might be appealed or it might be under a different process, it might be going into a gray area. So we'll determine at that point. We'll definitely keep you abreast of what the Planning Commission decides. And then at that point, if there's a procedural or other questions on that, we'll see how, we'll work with the city attorney on what we might be able to agendize with you.
Thank you.
And as Director Forbes did mention, it's not an item that's agendized and would be coming back should the project get approved. There was a condition of approval that it returned back. So we want to make sure that we discuss it in the appropriate forum.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no referrals to staff, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay, so this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.